So I got a really great comment a couple weeks ago requesting, well, I'll just read it to you. Can I request you do a video on articulation and enunciation and how to go about them in contemporary genres? Does the approach of singing mainly on the vowels and adding consonants on top for style and diction still the way to go about it in modern music, or do we need to think differently about it? And then clarified, asking about specifically Rachelle Ferrell, Esperanza Spalding, Jeff Buckley, and Prince. So great question and terrific example. So we're going to break this down and talk about articulation. So how we think about articulation totally shapes our sound, the pocket of the song, our relationship to the style, and even our emotional connection. So let's talk about what articulation affects, how to execute it, and its relationship within all the systems of singing. Hello there. If you're new here, my name is Dan Callaway. I teach musical theater, voice, and vocal pedagogy at Boston Conservatory at Berklee. More than 25 years kicking around on equity stages, and more than 15 years helping singers get to work on Broadway, national tours in the regions and around the world. And I'm very glad you're here with me today. So this is a way of thinking about articulation where it's almost like we're layering elements of the voice, where we're thinking, okay, our breath, the vibration, the resonance, the vowels, and then it's like we put articulation and consonants on this top layer. So I understand that, and there is a linearity of how these systems occur because there's movement of breath along a timeline. And all of these systems, it's not just linear. Everything is affecting everything else. So a lot of times, you've got a lot of Western classical based teaching that's telling you to really emphasize vowels, to sing on vowels. I remember when I was learning to sing classical music, I would get wrecked on too much consonant all the time. I would be closing to consonants too early, and I wasn't giving the vowel life through the phrase. So that was a tricky thing to learn, and I think it's an important thing to learn because the vowels really do carry a sense of soul through the sound. So a lot of times teachers will, what do they call it? I think there was one teacher, I think it was a teacher, Dr. Marilyn Booley at the conservatory, who calls it a consonectomy, where she takes the consonants out of the phrase and you just sing it on vowels. So the reason we do that is to feel the connection of tone, because when we bring articulation in, it can feel like an interruption to that. A lot of times we take out consonants and then add them back in to feel what legato feels like, to feel what communicative flow feels like. A lot of people say, vowels are the soul, consonants are the brains. Lots of these sort of ideas of what the shaping of phonemes through music means. Lots of ways to try to frame it. But in anything we sing, consonants are going to carry not only the meaning of words, very, very important, they also carry rhythmic energy. They also carry vibrations through, whether they be voiced or unvoiced. They also illustrate the identity and point of view of the singer. They also illustrate the world that the music is living in. What stylistic world does this music come from? And also, what's really most important, I think, to realize about articulation is they are part of the airflow fabric. They are integrated within the sharing. And I think really, I learned this when I finally started to enjoy singing in German. German is so full of so many delicious consonants. So I think understanding that air is flowing through every bit of the language was really huge for me and allowed me to apply a lot of this into lots of other styles. So I was just thinking about Allerseelen by Strauss just yesterday, because yesterday was All Souls Day, Allerseelen. And so even just the opening line of that beautiful song, even like a phrase of that song, Gib mir die Hand, dass ich sie heimlich drücke. Yeah, give me your hand that I can hold it to myself again. But all of those unvoiced consonants going through that German text was a great teacher for me. It also taught me economy of movement because, and I'll get into that a little later, especially as a theater singer, you hear so many coaches wanting you to articulate. You'll hear the phrases like, chew the words, really articulate, let me hear everything you're saying. And so sometimes articulation can become so, I would say, labored that it will draw attention to itself rather than the actual communication. So I talk a lot about economy of movement in articulation energy. But that's really important to understand. Like every consonant that I'm using, that I'm articulating, being it voiced or unvoiced, it is activated by air, and it is part of the airflow system. So vowels moving into consonants, just being aware of that stream of activity that's flowing through different shapes. Everything from the tongue, the jaw, the lips, the teeth, the hard palate, the soft palate, the tongue's relationship to that. All of that is sculpting moving air. So say even if I took like a sort of singer-songwritery phrase, what if I took, when you're down and troubled and you need some love and care. So if I'll take that super legato without a lot of consonant energy, when you're down and troubled. And a lot of times you see what happens, people sort of lift off of the consonant, and it's almost like they're trying to avoid it. You really can let it flow through. When you're down and troubled and you need some love and care. Very gentle articulation. Or when you're down and troubled and you need some love and care. So that's that sort of theatrical caricature that we have. So yeah, if you think like in a sort of Carole King, James Taylor vibe, you've got, think the microphone's there. When you're down and troubled and you need some love and care. You're going to find this really happy medium, something that feels conversational, something that feels very gentle. Again, economy of movement. Ask yourself, how much energy do I actually need to articulate these words? So that's just one little, you can play with any phrase, and we'll talk about that too, just playing with the contrasting feelings of a lot of articulation and not a lot. I always say that style is dialect. Different musical styles are a dialect. So every genre will grow out of a cultural soil. Any style of music is going to come from a certain location, a certain people group, a certain way of understanding music and communication. And then we see a lot of cross-pollination of genres now because we have so much music surrounding us, and lots of musics are now talking to each other, which is really beautiful. But it's always important to think, what style am I emerging from inside the world of this song? So what style am I living in if I'm singing Strauss? What style am I living in if I'm singing James Taylor, Carole King? How about if I'm singing Prince? How about if I'm singing Tracy Chapman? How about Jeff Buckley? What is the identity of the singer? What is the identity of the person who created the music? In what stylistic world do they live in? And in each style world, everyone is going to have sort of different speech rhythms and degrees of articulation, precision or looseness. So that's why when you over-articulate a style that's quite loose, it sounds funny. Or if you under-articulate a style that's very precise, that also sounds funny. And so knowing that as well is a really good way to just play with juxtapositions. If you want to be funny, you know how to sort of like mash things up so that you're doing something that's unexpected. So if we're looking at Rachelle Ferrell singing I Can Explain, so there's a lot of jazz, a lot of gospel infusion into this music. You can hear it immediately. The voice and the articulation, it's really interesting to watch the expression flow up through her. It's coming from this really authentic place. The face is like articulating every ounce of feeling and pain, and it's almost like she's literally tasting the text. So if you watch that, even I think she's like, I come to you with a heavy heart. But so the first phrase that you watch in this video, it's breathy, it is constricted, because I come to you with a heavy heart, right? So she's in that head voice, and she's like, I come to you. And she literally squeezes down so that there's just breath coming through. You don't even hear, there's not even voice there. And then when she goes with a head, she drops down in that pitch with a heavy heart. And so these phases, it's like, if you watch, just go and watch the video. So interesting because it's so authentically connected to tremendous artistry and tremendous emotional authenticity that if it were not connected to those things, it could look like caricature. But it is so authentic and is so masterfully done that it's completely honest. It's deep artistry. And then you also see, it's really interesting to watch the face shift as you watch through the video, how the expressions affect or don't affect the sound. So you think, where's resonance happening? Where's vowel happening? And it's almost like facial expression is almost like, it's like emotional energy is moving through, especially on sustained notes you see, where she'll make register shifts or do quick crescendos and diminuendos. Things like that will happen. And so that's all coming from emotional impulse. And it's almost like emotional energy. You see it moving around her face, which is really interesting to watch. So that articulation, and then there's a lot of divergent space. even with a heavy heart. So like the mouth is wide, but it's like, ah. There's this deep ringing out of pain and expression. So you see all kinds of styles from the African diaspora merging into this beautiful communication. So that's one person to look at. So articulation happening quite gently in there, while emotional energy is affecting facial expression, is affecting the body. You can feel the emotion from her body going into that Yamaha upright piano. So take a listen to that. That's Rachelle Ferrell. And then there's also this recording of Esperanza Spalding and Herbie Hancock from the Kennedy Center Honors, and she's covering Fragile by Sting, playing the bass and singing. Pretty amazing. In her interpretation, you hear a lot of percussive consonants coming through. If you're like, on and on the rain will fall like tears from the stars, like tears from the stars. Like those T's and S's are coming through very percussively. So it's almost like, I think a lot of times with jazz singers, the voice is very much instrument. The voice is very much what instrument am I playing? And actually that's a really good question to ask yourself whenever you're working with jazz idiom or jazz standards. Even asking yourself, what member of the orchestra am I right now? A lot of times when you hear jazz singers singing different standards and things like that, you hear sort of instrument mimicking in their sound. And so with this, you hear a lot of smooth glides, a lot of roundness, a lot of very open phase in the vocal fold coordination. But in that, you hear a lot more crispness and articulation coming through, sort of as a percussive contribution to the overall sound. So if you hear, if blood will flow when flesh and steel are one, she's really enjoying the consonants, giving them some time through the legato line. And so it's almost like every consonant has its own tonality through the phrasing. So again, it's voice's instrument and really lingering just for a nanosecond more on some of those consonants that you hear in that style. If you're listening to Jeff Buckley and Lover You Should Have Come Over, you hear a lot of legato, emotive vowel focus. There's a lot of vowel through that. And there's a lot of sort of shifting in the mouth, a lot of turning up. You see some singing up, sort of angled up a little bit and then kind of coming over, especially when he goes up into head voice. So even some of those sounds, and too old to just break free. Yeah, I don't quite have that one yet, but I hear a lot of mid-tongue. I'm sort of trying to think of his cover of Hallelujah as well. There's a really sort of deep, like, ooh, just a deep tending of pain that you hear in the middle of Jeff Buckley's voice. How does that manifest in consonants? How does that manifest in articulation? It's really important, I think. What is the emotional world, the emotional reality that's shaping tract, therefore shaping articulation, because they all go together. And then this really terrific recording of Prince doing Nothing Compares to You. So actually a lot of explosive consonants on this. So you hear a lot of, on that recording, he's live in Rio, and you hear, it's been 7 hours and 15 days since you took your love away. So a lot of vocal movement also mirroring what's coming from the reality of the soul there. Go out every night and sleep all day. Yeah, you hear a lot of percussiveness in that articulation and a lot of vocal movement. Yeah, I go out every night and sleep all day since you took your love away. I'm not going to be I'm not going to be going out as a Prince cover band anytime soon. But you hear that, you listen. Anyway, you get really self-conscious. But if I'm coming from Prince's point of view, okay? So like if I'm going to empathize, really, he's sitting behind that piano. Yeah. I go out every night and sleep all day since you took your love away. Yeah, so I've got Sinead in my ear. I've got another cover. I can't remember who else's cover I've got in my ear. I love that song. But the articulation is adding percussion. It's what's really cool to see is that there aren't as many rules as you think there are. A lot of times people are like, oh, you gotta, this is the rule for articulation in rock. This is the rule for, and there's a wide gamut. And it's all connected into what is the emotional story. What's the emotional reality, and how's that going to be coming through? How does that shape your body? Therefore, how does it shape how you're taking in a breath, how you're moving breath out, what's going on with vibration, what's going on with your tract, and what's going on with articulation, and how they all affect each other. Yeah, so your mouth shape, the timing, the consonant energy, it's all going to reflect style and identity. So what I like to do is I love to play with contrast. It's really great to see, because if your brain is like, oh, that's like that and that's like that, it just really helps to define things. You have a whole continuum of options. So, you can do over-articulate, under-articulate, and then Goldilocks. So what if we just take the hook from Time After Time, and let's over-articulate, under-articulate, and then find the balance. So if I go, if you're lost, I will catch you, you will find me. Time after time. So you see, like, the over-articulation affects the track shape as well. So then if I under-articulate, if you're lost, I will catch you, I'll be waiting. Time after time. Okay, then Goldilocks. If you're lost, I will catch you, you will find me. Time after time. So you sort of find there's a whole continuum of option. You can speak a lyric in rhythm. If you're lost, I will catch you, you will find me. What I also like to use some SOVTs, some semi-occluded exercises to find gentle articulation inside. So let's say we took Time After Time. Let's do a little, people call this blowfish. I call it loose lips. So we go, so I'm literally just articulating behind these loose lips like blowfish. It shows me how little the articulation is, where resonance really lives. You can also do it through a lip buzz. So got some air flowing, and then you can take that information. If you're lost, I will catch you, you will find me. So you can play around with that. So I think the big takeaway here is don't think about vowels and consonants in these sort of like separate universes. They are all part of one continuum. They're all incorporating with the airflow. They're all sculpting one continuous airflow that we're singing. So in contemporary singing, diction isn't necessarily about crispness. It's about the authenticity of sound, the authenticity of identity, the rhythm of the song, the rhythmic world, the dialect of the style. Also in contemporary styles, you're dealing with microphone, you're dealing with all these other different factors that you're thinking about. And in theater singing, you can really take a big lesson from what we learn in articulating for contemporary styles, because a lot of times in theater singing, we're told, really chew the words, get really crisp, get really articulate. And then sometimes you'll hear in some theater singers that the actual articulation draws attention to itself. And so then the communication is lost because you're thinking so much about the actual articulation of the words that you're losing the meaning of the words. So you have to watch that as well. So a lot of times you see how in these contemporary styles, how the diction actually is woven into the artistic interpretation, that it's really part of the identity of the singer and their point of view that is coming through in the very way that they're sculpting their consonants. So yeah, your articulation, it's literally part of your whole voice print. Depending on, and if you're shifting styles, there's one you, and it's looking through all these different points of view. And that's showing up in different ways. How your body is moving in that music, and then how the tract is forming and how consonants are forming as a result. So that's a pretty quick overview of how articulation shows up in contemporary styles, how it relates to articulation in any style. If you want to explore how articulation connects with resonance, airflow, phonation, you'll love the voice map. It walks you through every system of the voice and how they collaborate for clarity, ease, and style. So you can grab a free copy of the voice map overview, the diagram below, or you can join me in the resource library where we go step by step with actual exercises and tools that you can draw from depending on which system of the voice or what kind of coordination you need. So check that out. That's all in the description. And like I said, try things out. That's how you find things out. So many times as singers, we get really stuck in like, what's the right way to do this? And let me execute the right way. You have to try a lot of things. Try them, record them, see what they sound like, because they sound different out in the room than they do in your head. And just go into the lab with these sounds. What does it sound like if I articulate this? What does it sound like if I hold it back? And then listen. You can train your ears, and then you start to map. Oh, that's what that sounds like outside. That's what it sounds like inside. That's what it feels like inside, etc. So you get the point. And make sure you're giving yourself that permission to just try things out. If you understand how the systems of the voice are interacting, you can figure a lot of things out. So again, grab that voice map framework in the description. That's free. That gives you a whole framework of how the systems talk to each other with links to deep dive videos that'll help you out. And most of all, please remember that there is only one you, and somebody would love to hear the story only you can sing. Love much. Now go sing.